Hey guys, how are ya? Hope you've had a super fun week. Here we are again for another Bible lesson at home. That's okay. We can always have Bible lessons at home. This week, if you guys remember, we're up to the letter E. Oh my goodness, we've hit a vowel. This is great. I got my chart here, so we're going to recap real quick for Bible ABCs. All right, remember we started off with Aaron, Moses' older brother, throwing the snake on the ground, threw the rod on the ground, became a snake and ate up those other snakes in Pharaoh's palace. So Aaron's God was the best God. Next was Bible. So we talked about the different parts of the Bible. We talked about books of the Bible, categories for those books, 66 altogether. Don't forget it. And then we talked about Christ for the letter C. Of course, Christ is another name for Jesus. And we talked about other names for Jesus. Bread of life, light of the world, good shepherd. Then last week, this chart's too big. We talked about D for David, and so I drew a slingshot with some stones there, just so we could remember the story of David. And for us, even though we did talk about David and Goliath, we talked about David's character, how he was a man of God, a man after God's own heart, how he loved his family, and how other character traits, all that good stuff about David. I don't have to repeat all of them. You were there. You heard it. And now that means we're up to E. So for E, we're going to talk about a body part. What? Yeah, of course we can. Do whatever we want. It's E. So for E, I thought we would have a Bible lesson about eyes. Yeah, E-Y-E-S. It's an E word. Totally. And so for our Bible lesson this week, we're going to go to one of Jesus's miracles. So when Jesus was alive, he did a lot of things. One of the big things that he did was miracles. But another big thing he did was tell a lot of parables. And so we get so much information and so many lessons from both of those. So we're going to talk about a miracle. And a miracle is kind of categorized as something pretty amazing that nobody else could really do. So if someone's doing a miracle, it's got to be from God, kind of a thing. And that's, of course, what Jesus did. And so to set up our story, it's going to take place in the book of John, which if you remember when we went over our B for Bible lesson a couple weeks ago, John is one of the four Gospels. It's actually the fourth Gospel. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. So our story takes place in the book of John, and it's in John chapter 9. So if you want to look it up and read it for yourself after today's lesson, I encourage you to do that because won't hit all the points. So it's always fun to read it from the Bible. So just to set up our story a little bit further, prior to what we're going to talk about as far as eyes go, Jesus has gotten a group of disciples together and apostles. So this is going to be 12 guys that he travels around with. They're there with him. They do lots of things with him. Again, we get lots of Bible lessons from them as well. But they're walking along and they see a guy who is born blind. So drew him out for you here. See it? There you go. I have to hold it up a little bit. So it was a gentleman who was born blind, and you guys probably know if you're blind, it means that you can't see anything. And so if this guy was born blind, that means he has never seen anything his whole life, right? He has never seen a building. He's never seen his parents. He's never seen color or anything like that. So his world is very dark and probably very lonely. And since he's blind, and the story's taking place so long ago in biblical days, there probably wasn't a lot of opportunity for him to have a job and to do work because of his blindness. And so the way that he is able to eat is by begging. And so Jesus and the disciples are walking by and they see this guy, this blind gentleman. And the disciples ask Jesus, all right, Jesus, who was it? This guy or his parents? Who did the sin that caused his blindness? And so that was kind of a way of thinking back then that if something had happened to you that was negative, it was probably because you did something wrong. So you probably deserved it. And so Jesus is going to kind of put a spin on this a little bit and say, neither him or his parents did anything wrong, but he is blind so that the works of God might be seen through him. And I'm sure the disciples were like, so what? didn't make any sense to them, but it's about to. So Jesus is going to go up to our blind gentleman here, and Jesus bends down on the ground and he picks up some dirt. So this might be sounding familiar. You might have heard of this one. But what he's going to do is spit in his hand with the dirt in it. So picture Jesus, the Lord, spitting into his hand, and then mixing it together. So we got the dirt, we got the spit, and now we have, ta-da, mud. And so he's going to take that mud and go up to the blind man and put it on his eyes. So I'm sure the blind man was probably a little surprised, right? All of a sudden he's just sitting there, and then, oh goodness gracious, we got mud on our eyes. Oh boy, this is different. Okay, so Jesus puts mud on his eyes, and then he says, go and wash the mud off in the pool of Siloam, which is also called sent. I believe the Bible said S-E-N-T, so like sent, like go. So he sent him to Siloam. So you can picture blind man covered in mud going through the town trying to find the pool, feeling his way over. People are like, why does he have mud on his face? Gets to the pool, rinses his face off, and boom, he can see. This is incredible, right? This is a miracle. There's no other way this could have happened if it weren't for Jesus. And of course, God working through Jesus to make this happen. So this is a big deal. So it's always interesting, to picture like maybe the first few things that he saw. Maybe he saw the water for the first time and he's looking around at all the people at the pool, and maybe they're looking at him as well. He's like, oh, I didn't know the building was that big, and I didn't know that there was a cat there this whole time, and I thought you were skinnier. Okay. So he's probably seeing all these great things for the first time. So this could be where the story ends, right? Jesus does a miracle, done. Everybody goes on their way, and he's super thankful. But this is such a cool take on a miracle in that we get extra information about it. And so after he wipes the mud off of his eyes, heading out of the pool, he starts to see his neighbors and friends in the street, and they're like, hey, wait a minute, aren't you that guy that was born blind? And then his other friends, some other people that know him, are like, no, that can't be that guy because he can see. So is it you? Or were you the guy that's born blind that was been begging your whole life? And he said, oh yes, it's me. And let me tell you what, this guy put mud, picked up dirt, made it into mud with his spit, put it on my eyes, washed it off, and now I can see. His name is Jesus. This is incredible. Now, going on at this time, which is really important to note, is that there's a group of Jewish leaders called the Pharisees, and they do not like Jesus at all because they're waiting for the Messiah, and Jesus is saying, hey, I'm the Messiah, I'm right here. And they're like, you're not the Messiah. So there's a little bit of tension going on with how popular Jesus is becoming and then what the Pharisees believe to be true. So with this guy saying, oh, it was Jesus that did this miracle, that's going to cause a lot of alarm. And also, too, this happened on the Sabbath day. And for Jewish families, this was a day that you didn't do any work. So technically, since Jesus performed a miracle, he was going against the Sabbath because he did work. I know, right? Loopholes. So here's what happens. Later on, they call him before the Sanhedrin. Or not the Sanhedrin, sorry, that was a different story. They called him before the Pharisees, and the Pharisees are asking him all these questions about who Jesus was, how everything happened, and ultimately they say, no, clearly this guy is a sinner, Jesus, that did this to you. And this is such a good part because this blind man, gives us one of the most beautiful sentences that we still sing today, that we still talk about. He says, whether he's a sinner or not, I don't know. All I know is that I was blind, but now I see. And so every time we sing Amazing Grace, we're tagging back to this story and this man in this sentence. So it's kind of cool that it happened so long ago, and we still sing about it a lot today because it's such a beautiful line. So he's defending Jesus, saying all this stuff. They bring this guy's parents in because they're like, well, maybe if we bring in his parents, they'll recognize that he could see and wasn't really a miracle. So they try all this stuff just to make it not look exactly, what it was. and it does kind of fails every time. And towards the end, this blind man who received the miracle keeps pushing back at the Pharisees a little bit. And he's like, you know what, you guys are asking so many questions about him. Maybe you want to be his disciple. And they're like, "Wah!" And they get so mad. They're like, get out of here. We don't like that guy. And we don't like you either. So he goes back out into the street. Or back out into the town. And lo and behold, he runs into Jesus. So I love to think about that, the person who gave him his sight, performed this miracle, he gets to see him again. So he gets to see Jesus face to face and to thank him. And Jesus asked him if he believes, or does he want to know who the Son of Man is? And so Son of Man is Messiah, Savior. And this man says, tell me who he is and I'll believe on him. And Jesus says, I am he. And so the gentleman who had received his sight started worshiping Jesus right there. So not only did he receive the miracle from Jesus, but he defended Jesus, and then he was able to worship him there at the very end. So yeah, that's our story for today for eyes. But just kind of thinking about some different takeaways from this story, some important reminders. One of them that I like to kind of think about is that, when Jesus came up to the guy and did the mud, Jesus could have wiped off the mud himself, right? And said, ta-da, you can see. But what he did is he made the man do something, right? So the man had to get up, had to walk over to the pool, and had to wash it off. And so I think that's a really good reminder for us that Jesus, God, they want to give us so many blessings, and they have so many big plans for us. But it's not fair for us to just sit there and wait for things to happen. We actually have to do things, right? We have to be participants in our life, and we have to be willing to kind of be uncomfortable maybe sometimes, right? Maybe the guy just wanted to sit there. Maybe he knew that if he went to the pool, he might trip and fall and, here we go again, might get embarrassed. But he took that leap of faith and followed Jesus's instructions, and it paid off in a really big way. And so I think that's a good takeaway from the story. And it's something good for you guys to remember as kids, but then also for adults like me to remember as well. Alrighty, so yeah, that's our lesson today. Again, Bible ABCs, letter E for eyes. Miracle of eyes. One thing you guys might want to do is to kind of pretend what it might like, or maybe get a feeling for what it might be like to be blind. Maybe if you have a scarf, or you can even tie a couple socks around your eyes and kind of cut off your eyesight, and kind of feel your way around the house. Or maybe your family members could collect items and not show them to you, and you have to feel those items. So without having your sight, can you figure out what those items are just based on feel, or maybe like tapping them to see what they're maybe made of, or sounds and things like that. So that's something you could do to kind of pull out the lesson a little bit more. But of course, there's a craft. This one's a good one. So you have a guy who's missing a face, right? So what you can do is color your blind man, and then there's these two little slits. And so the easiest way to cut those slits is to fold your paper in half, and then just take your scissors and snip. Don't snip. You snip all the way through, like cut through the paper, but don't take out half of his face. And then you'll also get this little set, right? You got eyes, you got mud, and then you got closed eyes for him being blind. So you just thread this little slip through the slit. So easy, guys. Then we have a cool reminder of the story, how the guy was blind. Yep, was blind. Jesus came along, put some mud on his eyes. And then, after he washed off that mud, he could see. I feel like those eyes are a little bit small for his face, but I didn't make the craft. Somebody else did. I just just printed it off and sent it to you guys. So that's going to be your craft. Enjoy making it and enjoy decorating your guide. So yeah, that's it for today. We made it up to E. Next week is F. For F, we're going to do a number. So think about what number we might do that starts with F. It's going to be great. Hope you guys have a wonderful week. Think about the story of Jesus and the blind man, the big miracle that Jesus did. Again, it's found in John 9, so maybe read it. Read it with your family. Read it this week. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you again next week. We'll do it again. Bye, guys.